I'll never forget the moment my heart shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. Like a glass ornament dropped on a cold, hard floor. It wasn't the big betrayals that did it, not the years of silence. Not the forgotten birthdays, not even the way my children seemed to drift further away with every passing year. No, it was one single sentence, spoken in a crowded room, that finally broke me. My name is Margaret Thompson, most folks call me Maggie, and I'm 62. A retired elementary school teacher living alone in a small house on the edge of a quiet Oregon town. My life is simple now. Just me and Rusty, my old golden retriever, whose snores keep me company in the evenings. But it wasn't always this way. 3 years ago, I was still holding on to hope. The kind that clings to you like damp autumn leaves. Stubborn and heavy. My son Daniel, 38, and my daughter Laura, 35, hadn't spoken to me much since Daniel's wedding to Sarah, a woman whose mother, Eleanor Parker, seemed to cast a long shadow over our family. I'd raised my kids alone after their father left us high and dry when Daniel was just 10. I worked late nights grading papers, took extra tutoring jobs to pay for their soccer cleats and college applications. All while pretending I wasn't exhausted. I thought that's what mothers did, give everything. Expect nothing. Then the email came, a formal invitation to Daniel's 38th birthday party in Seattle. Sent not by him but by Sarah's assistant. No phone call, no personal note, just a crisp, digital card with gold lettering, join us to celebrate Daniel Thompson. My heart leapt. Maybe this was a chance to mend things. To sit across from my son and hear him laugh again. I spent hours picking out the perfect gift, a pocket watch engraved with our family initials, and rehearsed what I'd say to keep things light. To avoid the old hurts. I should have known better. Hope, it turns out, can be a cruel thing. Because that night, in front of everyone, Daniel raised a glass and said words that changed everything. I wish Ellie Parker had raised me. If you'd seen my house in Willow Creek, Oregon, you'd probably call it cozy. It's a small, cedar-shingled place with a wraparound porch and a garden out back where I grow roses and lavender. The living room still has the same scuffed hardwood floors where Daniel and Laura used to race their toy cars, leaving tiny scratches I never had the heart to sand away. There's a bookshelf stuffed with children's books I used to read to them, Goodnight Moon, Where the Wild Things Are, and a faded quilt on the couch, stitched by my mother before she passed. These days, it's just me and Rusty, my golden retriever, who limps a little but still wags his tail like he's got all the time in the world. It's quiet now, too quiet sometimes, with only the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional bark at a squirrel to break the silence. But it wasn't always like this. I raised Daniel and Laura on my own after their father, Tom, walked out when Daniel was 10 and Laura was 7. He left a note on the kitchen table, 2 sentences about needing space, and that was it. I was 28, a third-grade teacher with a mortgage and 2 kids who didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I took on extra tutoring after school, graded papers until midnight, and learned to stretch a grocery budget like it was an art form. I drove Daniel to every soccer practice, cheered at Laura's piano recitals, and co-signed a loan for Daniel's first condo when he landed his tech job in Seattle. For Laura, I paid off her credit card debt twice when she hit rough patches after college. I never complained, not once. I thought that's what love looked like, giving until you're empty. Then finding a way to give more. But somewhere along the line, things changed. Daniel met Sarah 3 years ago, and it was like a switch flipped. Sarah's mother, Eleanor Parker, Ellie to her friends, is a big name in Seattle. She runs a charity foundation, throws galas, and lives in a house with a view of Puget Sound. I met her once at the wedding, all pearls and polished smiles, and felt like I was wearing my teacher's cardigan to a black tie event. After that, Daniel's calls dwindled. Laura, who never married, started dodging my invitations, too. I'd get texts instead of visits, excuses instead of time. 3 years of near silence. And I kept telling myself they were busy, building their lives. I kept hoping they'd come back to me. Then the email arrived. It landed in my inbox on a rainy Tuesday. Subject line: Daniel's 38th birthday celebration. No, hi, Mom. No personal touch, just a sleek digital invite with a photo of Daniel and Sarah smiling under a chandelier. Join us at the Harbor Room, Seattle. It read, with a dress code, semi-formal, and an RSVP link. It wasn't even from Daniel, Sarah's assistant sent it. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold, and felt a flicker of something I hadn't let myself feel in years: hope. Maybe this was their way of reaching out. A chance to sit around a table, laugh, and remember who we were to each other. I ignored the voice in my head that whispered, if they really wanted you there, Daniel would have called. I spent days preparing. I drove to the next town over to buy a gift, a pocket watch. Silver and heavy, with Thompson family engraved on the back. It cost more than I should have spent on a teacher's pension. But I imagined Daniel opening it, smiling that lopsided grin I hadn't seen in years. I bought a navy dress, simple but elegant, to replace the faded skirts I usually wore. I even practiced what I'd say in front of the bathroom mirror. I'm so proud of you, Daniel. I've missed you. Nothing about the missed Mother's Days, the unanswered texts, or the $10 I'd wired to help him buy that condo. I wanted a fresh start, a moment to rebuild what we'd lost. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. Rusty curled up at the foot of my bed, his soft snores the only sound in the house. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, picturing the three of us, me, Daniel, Laura, together again. I thought about how Daniel used to draw me pictures in crayon. How Laura would climb into my lap during thunderstorms. I told myself this party could be a turning point. I'd show up, be the mother they needed. And maybe, just maybe, they'd see me again, not as a convenience, but as the woman who'd given everything to keep our family afloat. I packed the watch in a velvet box, tucked it into my purse, and drove the 2 hours to Seattle, my hands tight on the wheel. The Harbor Room was a glittering place, all glass and candlelight, far fancier than anywhere I'd ever taken my kids. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and walked in, clinging to that fragile hope like a lifeline. I should have known hope can be a dangerous thing. It blinds you, makes you forget the cracks that have been there all along. And that night, those cracks would split wide open, leaving me to face a truth I'd spent decades avoiding. The Harbor Room sparkled like something out of a magazine, all crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle waterfront. The air smelled of fresh lilies and expensive wine, and the crowd, maybe 50 people, hummed with laughter and clinking glasses. I felt out of place in my navy dress, like a sparrow among peacocks. But I squared my shoulders and scanned the room for Daniel. I spotted him near the bar, his dark hair slicked back, laughing with Sarah, who looked radiant in a silk gown. Laura was there too, hovering near a group of Sarah's friends, her smile tight, like she was trying to fit in. I caught her eye, gave a small wave, but she only nodded before turning away. My heart sank a little, but I brushed it off. This was Daniel's night, and I was here for him. I clutched the velvet box with the pocket watch, its weight grounding me as I navigated the room. A few of Sarah's relatives smiled politely, but no one knew who I was. Are you a colleague of Daniel's? One woman asked, her pearls gleaming. I forced a smile. No, I'm his mother. Her eyebrows shot up, and she murmured something about getting another drink. I found a seat at a corner table, half hidden by a potted fern, and watched as Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands like a politician. He looked happy, confident. The boy who'd once clung to me during nightmares, now a man who belonged to this glittering world. Sarah's mother, Eleanor Parker, held court near the center of the room. Her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her dress a tailored cream number that screamed money. She had a way of commanding attention without trying, her laugh warm but measured, her gestures graceful. I couldn't help but compare myself, my sensible flats, my graying hair pulled into a low bun, my hands still rough from years of gardening. I wondered if Daniel saw it too. The gap between her world and mine. The evening wore on. A waiter offered me champagne, but I stuck to sparkling water, wanting to keep my head clear. I made small talk with a cousin of Sarah's who asked if I was with the catering staff, and I didn't bother correcting him. I kept waiting for Daniel to notice me, to come over, maybe hug me the way he used to, but he was caught up in the swirl of guests. And I told myself it was fine, he was the guest of honor. After all, Laura stayed on the other side of the room, her eyes flicking toward me once or twice. But she never approached. I felt like a ghost, present but unseen. Then the speeches began. Sarah went first, her voice clear and confident as she thanked everyone for coming. "Daniel's the heart of our family," she said, her hand resting on his arm. "This is for him, and for the life we're building together." The room clapped, and I joined in, my hands trembling slightly with pride. Then Eleanor stood, her presence silencing the chatter. She spoke about Daniel's ambition, his kindness, how he'd become like a son to her. My smile froze. Like a son. The words stung, but I swallowed hard, telling myself it was just a figure of speech. Daniel took the microphone next. He looked taller somehow, his tech bro suit crisp, his eyes bright. "I want to thank you all for being here," he started, his voice carrying over the room. "This year's been incredible, new projects at work, a growing family with Sarah, and so many people who make it all possible." He turned slightly, and I thought, just for a moment, he was looking at me. My heart lifted. Maybe this was it, the moment he'd acknowledge me. The mother who'd stayed up nights helping him with math homework, who'd driven him to college interviews, who'd wired money when his startup dreams crashed. But then he raised his glass, his gaze fixed on Eleanor. "There's one person I need to thank most of all," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Ellie Parker. She's shown me what it means to have a real family. To be supported, inspired, lifted up. I wish," he paused, and the room seemed to hold its breath. "I wish Ellie had raised me. She's the mother I always dreamed of. The one who taught me what strength really looks like." The room erupted in applause. Eleanor stood, her eyes misty, pulling Daniel into a hug as Sarah beamed beside them. Laura clapped too, her face unreadable, but she didn't look my way. The noise roared in my ears, but I was frozen, my water glass trembling in my hand. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. So certain, so final, as if I'd never existed, as if the years of packing lunches, wiping tears, and scraping by to keep our family together meant nothing. I felt every eye in the room, or maybe none of them, because no one seemed to notice the woman in the corner whose world had just collapsed. I don't remember deciding to leave. One moment I was sitting there, the next I was walking through the dim glow of the restaurant, past the clinking glasses and careless laughter, out into the cool Seattle night. I left the pocket watch on the gift table, buried under a pile of glossy packages. No one called after me. No one followed me to the parking lot, where I sat in my old Subaru, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Something was shifting inside me. Something sharp and cold, like a blade being honed. Every late-night call I'd answered, every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd told myself, "They're my kids. They'll come around," it all crystallized into a single, brutal truth. I'd been invisible to them for years, a convenience they could discard when someone shinier came along. And in that moment, alone in my car with the city lights blurring outside, I realized I was done. Done pretending, done hoping, done being the mother who gave everything and got nothing but a public rejection in return. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine rumbling to life, and drove back to Willow Creek with a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I wasn't the same woman who'd left that morning. I was someone new, someone who'd finally seen the truth and was ready to act on it. The drive back to Willow Creek was a blur, the highway lights streaking past like falling stars. I didn't cry, not even when I got home and Rusty greeted me with his slow, wagging tail. I sat on the porch in the dark, the pocket watch still in Seattle, probably forgotten under a pile of fancier gifts. Something had shifted inside me, not just pain but a kind of clarity, sharp and unyielding, like the first frost of winter. For years, I'd been a doormat, loving my kids so fiercely I'd let them walk all over me, excusing every slight, every absence, every time they treated me like an afterthought. But Daniel's words at that party, "I wish Ellie had raised me," weren't just a slap in the face. They were a wake-up call. I was done. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the house silent except for Rusty's soft snores. I made coffee, strong and black, and sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped Daniel with his algebra homework. where I'd bandaged Laura's skinned knees. I didn't feel like that mother anymore. I felt like a woman who'd spent decades pouring love into a bucket with a hole in it. By the time the sun rose, painting the sky pink over my garden, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to sit with this pain. I was going to act. My first call was to Helen, my attorney from the divorce years. She'd helped me keep the house when Tom left. And now I needed her again. "Maggie, what's going on?" she asked. Her voice warm but concerned. I told her I wanted to revise my will. No hesitation, no tears, just the facts. I wanted my modest savings, my house, and my teacher's pension redirected. Half to the Willow Creek Community Center, where I'd taught summer reading programs for years. A quarter to a scholarship fund for kids from single-parent homes. The rest to a trust for any grandchildren who reached out to me after turning 18. Nothing for Daniel, nothing for Laura. Helen didn't push back, though I could hear the questions in her silence. "I'll draft it today," she said. "You're sure?" I was, surer than I'd been about anything in years. The second call was to Joe Ramsey, an old friend who ran a private investigation firm. We'd met at a school fundraiser years ago, bonded over bad coffee and a shared love of jazz. He'd offered to help when Laura got tangled up with a shady ex. And now I needed his skills again. "I need information," I told him. "Emails, texts, anything you can find about what my kids have been saying about me. And anything you can dig up on Eleanor Parker." Joe didn't ask why. "Give me a week," he said. I trusted him to be discreet, thorough, and fast. The third call was to a storage facility in town. I rented a small, climate-controlled unit, no questions asked. I didn't know exactly what I'd put in it yet. But I knew it would be more than just boxes. It would be the weight of a lifetime I was ready to let go. That week, while waiting for Joe's report, I started sorting through the house. I pulled out photo albums, Daniel's first soccer game, Laura's graduation, the Christmas we built a snowman in the front yard. I found letters they'd written me as kids. Crayon drawings with "To Mom" scrawled in wobbly letters. I didn't cry, but each item felt like a stone in my chest. I packed them carefully, not out of sentiment but because I had a plan. By the time Joe called back, I was ready. "Maggie, you're not gonna like this," he said, his voice heavy. He'd found emails and texts between Daniel and Sarah, Daniel and Ellie, even Daniel and Laura. They painted a picture I'd suspected but never wanted to face. Daniel called me overbearing, said I clung to the past and didn't fit in his new life with Sarah. Laura agreed, texting Daniel that I was too needy and embarrassing at family events. But the real gut punch was Ellie. Joe had uncovered bank records showing she'd been funneling money to Daniel, $5 here, $10 there, for his car, his mortgage, even his vacation to Hawaii. In exchange, she'd asked him to distance himself from me, to prioritize the family that lifts you up. It wasn't just neglect, it was manipulation, cold and calculated, and my son had fallen for it. I thanked Joe, hung up, and sat in my living room, Rusty's head in my lap. The anger didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange calm, like the quiet before a storm. I spent the next 2 days at my desk, organizing. I compiled every financial transaction I'd made for my kids, $8 for Daniel's condo down payment, $4 for Laura's debt, countless smaller amounts for car repairs, plane tickets, emergencies they never repaid. It added up to $122.347. I printed bank statements, receipts, even the email confirmations, and bound them into 2 leather notebooks, one for each child. Then came the photos. I spent hours scanning old pictures, Daniel's 5th birthday, Laura's piano recital, family camping trips, using software I'd learned for school projects. I edited every one. Wherever my name appeared, to Mom, Love, Maggie, I replaced it with Eleanor Parker. In group photos, I blurred my face or swapped it with a stock image of a woman who could pass for Ellie. It was meticulous, almost surgical, and with every click, I felt lighter, like I was carving away the parts of me they'd rejected. 1 week after the party, I sent the packages. Daniel's went to his sleek Seattle apartment, Laura's to her condo in Portland. Each contained a notebook of financial records, a folder of Joe's findings, texts, emails, bank transfers proving Ellie's influence, and a box of altered photos and letters. I paid for signature required delivery. Timed for 8 a.m., just early enough to jolt their morning routines. I included no note, no explanation. The evidence would speak for itself. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Laura. "Mom, what is this?" Her voice was sharp, almost panicked. Some kind of sick joke? I was pruning roses in the garden. The scent of earth grounding me. "Hello, Laura," I said, my tone even. "I assume you got my package." "A package?" she snapped. "It's a ledger of every penny you ever spent on us. Like we're supposed to pay you back. And these photos, my graduation. Daniel's wedding, with her name on them? What are you trying to do?" I snipped a wilted bloom. Watching it fall. "I'm not trying to do anything. Laura, I'm giving you what you and Daniel seem to want, a history with Ellie as your mother." She sputtered, indignant. "You're making it sound like we owe you for being our mom. And those texts, how did you even get them? That's creepy, Mom." I almost laughed at the irony. Creepy was her texting Daniel that I was pathetic for sending Christmas cards they never answered. Creepy was Daniel thanking Ellie for saving him from my suffocating love. "Did you read the bank records?" I asked. "Ellie's been paying Daniel to push me out." "That's not love, Laura, that's control." Silence. Then a huff. "You're unbelievable. I'm done with this." She hung up. I went back to my roses. The clippers steady in my hand. Rusty lay nearby, basking in a patch of sun. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the familiar ache of wanting my kids to love me back. I felt free, like I'd finally set down a burden I'd carried too long. The next day, Daniel's call came. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. "This isn't you, but it was me, the real me, not the mother they'd invented to justify their disregard." And I wasn't done yet. There was one more step. One final piece to make sure they understood. Love without respect isn't love. It's servitude, and I was nobody's servant anymore. 2 days after the packages arrived, I was in my garden, deadheading lavender under a gray Oregon sky, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Rusty lifted his head, ears perked, but didn't bark, a sign he knew the visitors. I straightened, brushing dirt from my hands, and saw Daniel's sleek Tesla and Laura's beat-up Honda pulling into my driveway. My kids, together, at my house for the first time in years. Part of me wanted to feel something, nostalgia, maybe, or that old maternal pull, but all I felt was a quiet resolve. Like the earth beneath my feet after a long rain. Daniel stepped out first, his face tight, the same look he'd had as a teenager when I caught him sneaking out. Laura followed, clutching the box of altered photos, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. I stayed by my garden, clippers in hand, and waited. They walked up the path, stopping a few feet away, as if my porch was a line they weren't sure they could cross. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice clipped. "We need to talk about this stunt you pulled." I set the clippers down, wiping my hands on my apron. "Hello, Daniel. Laura, I assume you're here about the packages." Laura's voice broke in, sharp and trembling. "What is this, Mom? You hacked our messages, dug up bank records, and, God, defaced our childhood photos? You replaced your name with hers? That's sick." She thrust the box forward. A few photos spilling out, Daniel's first soccer trophy, Laura's high school play, my name erased and replaced with Eleanor Parker in neat digital script. I looked at them, my grown children standing on my lawn, their indignation almost palpable. "Sick?" I repeated, my voice calm, almost curious. "Was it sick when you told Sarah's friends I'm too clingy to be around your son, Daniel? Or when you texted Daniel that I'm pathetic for sending you birthday cards? Laura? Was it sick when you stood in front of a room full of people and said you wished another woman had raised you, Daniel?" They flinched, but I kept going. "I didn't create this reality. You did. I'm just reflecting it back." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's it made my chest ache for a split second. "You're twisting everything," he said. "I didn't mean it like that at the party. I was caught up in the moment, trying to honor Ellie for everything she's done for us." I raised an eyebrow. "Everything she's done? Like paying your car loan? Your mortgage? That trip to Hawaii? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Daniel? That I wouldn't see the bank transfers. The emails where she told you to focus on the family that matters and leave me behind? His face paled, and Laura's eyes widened, flicking to her brother. What's she talking about? Laura asked, her voice low. Daniel didn't answer, his jaw tight. I stepped forward, picking up a folder from the porch table where I'd anticipated this moment. Here, I said, handing it to Laura. Emails between Daniel and Ellie. Bank statements showing $45 transferred to his account over 2 years. In exchange, he was to keep me at a distance, fewer calls. No visits. No drama from his needy mother. That's the family you both chose. Laura flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. Daniel, is this true? She whispered. He looked away, toward the garden. Anywhere but at us. It's not what it looks like. He muttered. Ellie was helping us. Sarah and I were struggling. And she stepped up. Unlike, he stopped. But I knew what he didn't say. Unlike me, the mother who'd worked double shifts to pay for his college. Who'd wired money when his startup failed. Who'd never asked for a dime in return. Unlike me, I finished for him, my voice steady. The mother who didn't have a trust fund to buy your loyalty. The mother who gave everything and got called overbearing for it. Laura's eyes filled with tears. But she didn't speak. I turned to her. And you, Laura, you didn't take Ellie's money. But you didn't stop Daniel either. You agreed with him, called me embarrassing, said I was holding you back. You both made it clear I'm not the mother you want. So I gave you what you asked for, Ellie. In every photo, every memory, every piece of your history. That's not fair, Daniel said, his voice rising. You're making us out to be monsters. We're not perfect, okay? We've been busy, stressed. You raised us to be independent. And now you're punishing us for it? I almost laughed, not out of humor but at the absurdity. Independent? I said. I raised you to be kind. To respect the people who love you. I raised you to see me as a person. Not a bank account or a punching bag. But you chose Ellie's money. Her status. Her version of family over me. And I'm done pretending that's okay. Laura set the box down on the porch steps. Her shoulders slumping. Mom, I didn't know about the money. I messed up. I should have called more. Come by. But this, she gestured to the photos. This feels like revenge. Like you're trying to hurt us. I looked at her. My daughter. The girl who'd once made me paper hearts for Mother's Day. Not revenge. Laura, I said softly. Consequences. For years, I let you both treat me like I was disposable because I thought that's what mothers do, absorb the hurt. Keep giving. But love without respect isn't love. It's servitude. And I'm done serving. Daniel stepped forward, his voice softer now, almost pleading. Mom, let's fix this. I'll apologize, okay? I shouldn't have said what I did at the party. But you can't just erase yourself from our lives like this. I shook my head. I'm not erasing myself. Daniel, I'm rewriting the story you've already started. You wanted Ellie as your mother? You've got her, in every photo. Every letter. And you've got her money. Her influence. But you don't get to have me as a fallback when it suits you. Laura's tears spilled over now. But Daniel's face hardened. So that's it? You're cutting us off? Your own kids? What about my son? Your grandson? You're going to punish him, too? I felt a pang at the mention of my grandson. A toddler I'd only seen in photos Sarah posted online. But I held firm. He's not being punished, I said. I've set up a trust for him. Accessible when he's 18, if he wants to know me. But you and Laura? You've made your choices. And I've made mine. I turned back to my lavender. Picking up the clippers. You should go now, I said, my voice calm but final. There's nothing left to say. Daniel stared at me, his eyes searching for the mother he thought he knew, the one who'd always forgive. Always bend. Laura took a step toward me. Then stopped, clutching the folder of evidence. Mom, she whispered, but I didn't look up. I heard their footsteps retreat. The car doors slam. The engines fade down the road. Rusty nudged my knee, his warm fur grounding me. I kept clipping, the scent of lavender filling the air. And for the first time in years, I felt unburdened, like I'd finally claimed a piece of myself I'd given away long ago. But I wasn't done. There was one more truth to face. One more step to take. And it would change everything. After Daniel and Laura left, the house felt quieter than ever. But it wasn't the heavy silence I'd grown used to over the years. It was lighter, cleaner, like the air after a summer storm. Rusty curled up at my feet as I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the pines, painting the sky in shades of peach and gold. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel the ache of wanting my kids to call, to visit, to see me. I'd spent so long chasing their love, convincing myself that if I just gave more, they'd come back. But standing in my garden that day, clippers still warm in my hand, I realized I didn't need their approval to feel whole. I was enough. The weeks that followed were a kind of rebirth. I changed my phone number, not out of spite but because I needed space to breathe. I deactivated my social media accounts, tired of scrolling through Sarah's curated photos of my grandson, a little boy with Daniel's eyes, who I'd never met. I sold the old house in Willow Creek, the one filled with memories of bedtime stories and birthday cakes, and bought a small apartment by the river. It had a balcony where Rusty could nap in the sun and a tiny garden patch where I planted wildflowers, poppies and lupins that would bloom in defiant bursts of color come spring. The move wasn't about running away, it was about building a life that was mine, not defined by what I could give to others. I started volunteering at the local library, leading a book club for adults who'd never had the chance to read for pleasure. We discussed Jane Eyre and The Secret Garden, and I found myself laughing again, sharing stories with strangers who became friends. I took up writing, too, jotting down memories in a leather journal, not the painful ones, but the small joys, the smell of rain on my roses, Rusty's excited bark when I grabbed his leash, the way the river sparkled at dusk. I waited for regret to creep in, for that maternal instinct to pull me back to Daniel and Laura, to make me pick up the phone and beg for reconciliation. It never came. Instead, I felt something new, something that bloomed in the spaces where worry and disappointment used to live, peace. A year passed. Autumn came, turning the riverbank into a canvas of crimson and amber. I'd settled into my new rhythms, mornings at the library, afternoons gardening, evenings with a good book and a glass of wine. Then, one crisp October morning, a letter arrived, slipped under my door. The handwriting was Daniel's, the same slanted scrawl I'd seen on his childhood drawings. I sat at my kitchen table, Rusty snoring nearby, and opened it. Mom, it began. I'm sorry. I was wrong, about what I said at the party. About everything. Ellie's money came with strings, and I was too blind to see it. I'm trying to fix things, to be better. I miss you. Can we talk? The letter went on, detailing how he'd confronted Ellie, how Sarah was struggling with the truth about her mother's manipulation. He didn't ask for money or favors, just a chance to rebuild. I read it twice, then set it on the table, next to a vase of wildflowers. I waited for the old pull, the urge to run back to him, to forgive and forget. It didn't come. I thought about my grandson, the toddler I'd only seen in photos. I'd set up the trust for him, as promised, to be his when he turned 18. A way to love him without stepping back into a role that had drained me dry. I thought about Laura, who'd sent a single text a few months back. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I hadn't replied, not because I was angry, but because apologies without change are just words. And I was done living on promises. One evening, as I walked Rusty along the river, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Sarah, her voice hesitant. Maggie, it's me. Daniel's not doing great. He feels awful about everything. Ellie's foundation is under investigation for financial misconduct, and it's hitting him hard. Would you consider coming to see him? For our son's sake? I listened, the river lapping softly at the bank, and felt that same calm resolve. Sarah, I said, not unkindly, I'm sorry Daniel's struggling, but I can't be his safety net anymore. I've spent too long being the one who fixes things, and I'm done. Your son will always have a place in my life when he's ready to find me. But Daniel and I? That bridge is gone. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I understand. I just thought. She trailed off, and I wished her well before hanging up. I stood by the river, watching the water catch the last light of day, and felt no guilt, no second guessing. I'd learned something my children hadn't. Love isn't about endless giving. It's about mutual respect, about seeing each other as people, not roles to be played. I'd been their mother, their bank, their cheerleader, but I'd never been their equal in their eyes. And I was okay with that now. Because I'd found my own worth. Spring came, and my wildflowers bloomed, a riot of color that made strangers stop and smile on their walks by the river. I kept volunteering, kept writing, kept living. I heard through a mutual friend that Daniel had moved to a smaller apartment. That Laura was taking accounting classes to start over. My grandson was growing, a bright kid who loved dinosaurs. Or so I was told. I didn't reach out, not because I didn't care, but because I'd learned that caring for myself was just as important as caring for them. One evening, as I sat on my balcony with Rusty, a glass of wine in hand, I looked out at the river, its surface shimmering under the stars. I thought about the woman I'd been, the one who'd given everything. Who'd believed love meant swallowing pain. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger. Someone who knew that boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. That forgiveness requires accountability, not blind devotion. That sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting go, of guilt, of expectation, of relationships that diminish you. I'd taught my children a lesson. Not through words but through the life I was living now. Whether they learned it was up to them. But I'd learned it, and that was enough. As Rusty sighed contentedly at my feet, I raised my glass to the night sky, to the woman I'd become, and to the truth I'd finally claimed. I was more than a mother. I was Maggie, and I was free.